Common routes are some of the most common features in visual novels. Usually they're at the beginning of a visual novel as a way to introduce the characters and setting and give enough context before transitioning into a character or plot route. In many cases, a great common route alone could be a big factor in how much people like or get into a visual novel as a whole. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my personal top 10 favorite common routes in visual novels. At number 10, I have Koikari, Love for Hire, or Ren'ai Karichaimashita. Asa Project is well known for having really wacky humor in situations, and what better way to start off a common route than to have a rent-a-boyfriend-like service. But it isn't limited to boyfriends. You could be a pretend paramour, or even a pretend older brother, for instance. Anything goes as long as you have money. The humor and wacky situations in the common route is quite amusing. The main character having to juggle around who he has to see, seeing all the characters' silly motivations to pay the main character, and all the characters eventually interacting and meeting up with each other is a great start for this visual novel. Note that I'm only including everything up until the Tsubaki twins branch. The Emi vs Hasumi part technically has their own common route branch, but I did not like this part at all, and therefore not including it. At number 9, I have Full Metal Daemon Muramasa. This is a very tough one to talk about due to the heavy spoilery nature of this visual novel. However, one thing I can say is that it's split into chapters. I quite like chapter-based common routes, especially ones that focus on the protagonist meeting different characters. There are 5 chapters, all with very different and interesting characters and scenarios. One of the biggest pros and cons about this common route is how Nitro Plus style edgy this gets. This visual novel is not afraid to get very dark related to certain plot twists. On one hand, it makes things very unpredictable, in chapter 1 in particular having some particularly hard-hitting plot twists. On the other hand, Nitro Plus really likes their random, gratuitous, dark H scenes, which I pretty much never like. That alone brought down my enjoyment of the common route. Muramasa in general can be a little slow and overly detail-heavy, which brings down the overall pacing, including in the common route. That said, it was still really cool to see all the fight scenes and the struggles that both the protagonist and the various chapter-specific characters go through. At number 8, I have Rewrite. For better or worse, this common route is insanely long and has a mix of slice-of-life comedy and some slight plot foreshadowing. Unfortunately, for a visual novel that is by far the most plot-heavy keyword, Rewrite's common route is, in my opinion, spends a little bit too much on slice-of-life. That said, this common route still has some very solid comedy for what's there. Stuff like Yoshini's Chunisms or Shizuru's deadpan honesty makes for some consistently humorous scenes. In between some of the slice of life are interesting foreshadowing to other routes. But the main reason this common route even makes this list is because it has one of my all-time favorite visual novel heroines, Kotori Kanbei. Anytime this quirky, goofy girl is on screen, there's always a guaranteed laugh, chuckle, or smile out of me. I make no exaggeration that I think Kotori in the common route is an 11 out of 10 character. I've even made a separate video highlighting my favorite Kotori English lines, and the vast majority of those are from the common route. But even when she's not taking part of comedy, Kotori has a very comforting, motherly-like vibe at times, and even has some interesting foreshadowing to events that happen in her route. At number 7, I have Sankaku Ren'ai Love Triangle Trouble. This is another Asa Project visual novel similar to Koikari with similar comedy. The main setting is a nerdy otaku club, and they have kind of exaggerated fans of different types of nerdy things like fighting games, idols, gacha games, and even eroge. This chill and relatable setting is part of why I personally preferred Sankaku's common route and the visual novel itself by a bit over Koikari. Sankaku Ren'ai lives off their comedy, and just about every character has their hilarious quirk that never got old for me. But the most stick-out character in this regard for me was easily Sheena, the eroge queen herself. Some might see her as loud and annoying, but I think she in particular was easily one of the most consistently hilarious characters in a visual novel I've ever seen, while still being relatable. Many times when she talks, she has to relate to eroge in some silly way, and part of why she claims to like the protagonist is because he's the token plain guy. It helps she even breaks the fourth wall, with one of her earliest jokes just giving you the option for her to give you all the choices you need to get on her route. At number 6, I have Meteor World Actor. This is another visual novel with a chapter-based common route, and was quite enjoyable because of it. I always liked common routes where the main characters help out different characters, and this visual novel executed that in a very fun way. Meteor World Actor in general is an urban fantasy visual novel where the main character protagonist protagonist is part of the police force. That alone makes a really cool mystery-ish crime-solving story in the common route, but the protagonist, Ruko Hiryu, is definitely not a by-the-book officer, preferring to use his powers and wiles in potentially underhanded ways to get the results he wants. He's also kind of a dick to just about everybody he talks to. Thankfully, he's ultimately still a good person, but seeing his assholery banter with both major characters and chapter-specific characters alike makes this common route very fun to go through. Meteor World Actors' common route mysteries are pretty interesting too, with pretty cool conclusions. Now, if only the same could have been done for the actual Heron routes having conclusions. At number 5, I have A Sky Full of Stars, or Miyazora. A Sky Full of Stars is interesting and has one of the few common routes I can think of that have a lot of childhood era flashbacks. That's because this visual novel is all about the main childhood friend trio and how their past connects to the present, especially in terms of their love of stargazing. There are quite a bunch of childhood friends in visual novels, but outside them mildly referencing a few scenes of how they talked as kids, we rarely get to see how they became friends exactly in detail. I quite like the flashback scenes of A Sky Full of Stars because it has a lot of really wholesome scenes on how the main childhood friend trio became friends, as well as seeing how their characters who are quite different in the present day. But the present day content is still quite good too. A lot of it focuses on the main character Akito being burned out from stargazing due to some stuff that happened in the past. It's nice to see what the other characters do to help him get back his dormant passion. There's also an interesting common route branch towards the end between the childhood friend trio and the two main heroines who attend the school that has the 6 Stars Club meetings. At number 4, I have If My Heart Had Wings, or Konosora. This visual novel goes all in on the glider theme, and even though I basically knew nothing about gliders when I first started reading, If My Heart Had Wings did a great job getting me to care. I even made a vlog where I tried out a glider ride because of this visual novel. What helps is how they executed the main heroine, Kotori. She's clearly a bit lost in life after she became wheelchair bound. Seeing her slowly get light back in her eyes from gaining passion in gliders, as well as seeing the characters both build and test out glider flights were all really nice and interesting to see. It helps that while there's some light info dumping here and there about gliders, it's incorporated well with the character interactions. I also like that you get to see the in real life motions that you have to take in order to take off in a glider, like seeing Aoi's point of view in the glider seat, and even hearing Ange's "runway is clear" in English, getting you amped up for each glider takeoff. If My Heart Had Wings has a kinda interesting second part to its common route that only shows up in 4 routes. This second part is a lot shorter, but it's a small time skip and helps pave the way for the heroine routes. At number 3, I have Marshmallow All the Way Home. It's a pretty light-hearted moege, but one of the things that stick out immediately is how a lot of the setting is not in high school, but at a sweet shop owned by one of the main heroines. I actually like that right from the beginning, one of the main themes of the common route is thinking of ways for the shop to improve, get more customers, etc. It all starts with the protagonist being hired and him being a big part of even getting people to notice the shop. Seeing the progression on a lot of little things the shop and its employees have to learn is really nice. A bunch of the development does happen since the protagonist feels like he has some kind of magical entrepreneurial powers due to some odd jobs he's worked on in the past, but it works for the most part. There's also some really wholesome character growth and scenes. Characters like Sasa and Raiha are clearly not in the best state of minds when you first meet them, but through certain events, those two in particular get really heartwarming development. But even characters like Kanon, the owner of the shop, getting that extra respect from her employees due to certain events was really nice to see. At number 2, I have the original Majikoi Love Me Seriously, or Majite Watashi ni Koi Shinasai. Majikoi is my number 1 visual novel ever, and the common route being an excellent start to it was definitely a big factor. The common route is pretty lengthy for a slice of life comedy visual novel, but it does a great job giving people a sense of the type of humor to expect within the first 10 to 15 minutes, as well as slowly introducing a lot of different characters you'll see in heroine routes. And I mean no exaggeration when I say there's a lot of characters introduced in the common route. You'll get introduced to all the characters in the Kazuma family, Class 2F, Class 2S, and various other students or even non-school characters. You'll also get a taste of some of the fun action events that is a big part of Majikoi's setting. These events are pretty entertaining in their own right. However, my absolute favorite part of the common route, which extends to one of my favorite parts of the visual novel itself, is the Kazuma family. The Kazuma family is basically a mix of the protagonist and his childhood friends. There's very few visual novels who do the big group of friends well, and they combine a great mix of genuine friendly interaction with little cheese, but even some surprisingly good character development even in the common route. I particularly like the introduction Yukie and Chris got into the Kazuma family. There was even a little bit of drama related to them towards the end of common, which I think this is a perfect way to integrate the two new characters into the family while getting to see the other characters' reactions and feelings. At number 1, I have Bokuten, Why I Became an Angel. This is by far my favorite common route, and honestly I don't think anything even comes close, not even Majikoi's. It has a chapter system, with the main characters having to help 6 different potential couples. All of them have very unique themes compared to most romance stories I've seen in visual novels, and since they're all romances not directly involved with the main character, it makes them more unpredictable. Bokuten in general is a pretty dramatic visual novel, and I think each chapter has some really interesting character development and hard-hitting drama that makes each chapter quite memorable. Most chapters have a choice at the end, basically deciding how meddlesome you want to get into the couple's life, so it's really interesting to see the multiple endings for each based on the main character's actions and how the characters eventually decide to act. To top it all off, I actually think Bokuten is a generally well-paced visual novel, so you get just enough time to be immersed in each couple, but it doesn't spend too much time on any of them, so you're getting a good amount of different stories in a solid time frame. Also, the soundtrack for Bokuten is one of my new personal favorites, especially in the dramatic moments. That said, I won't say this common route is flawless. There's a few spots that are a bit too edgy for my liking, and this visual novel likes its age gap romance a bit too much, but otherwise I really enjoyed it. And there you have it, my personal top 10 favorite common routes in visual novels. What did you think of my choices? Do you guys have any particular favorite common routes I didn't mention? Feel free to leave a comment below with your opinions.